Nick and Rick's Pizza, rules for delivering to Macuil. Hello Daryl, as we mentioned previously, you'll be headed on your first delivery to Broken Hand Pond shortly. As always, however, we have additional information regarding the customer himself. While he's not exactly the pond's worst inhabitant, he is dangerous enough to warrant more than a few precautions. Everything you need to know is included below. Customer name, Macuil. Address, 2945 Champ Lane. Regular order, small cheese pizza, extra crispy crust, topped with pig eyes, long fingernail clippings, and pacu teeth. The order also requests a large bag of kettle-cooked chips. Residence description, small pool covered in lily pads at the far end of Broken Hand Pond's first finger. Its edges are almost entirely surrounded by large, flat rocks. Customer description, Macuil vaguely resembles an unusually large, extremely thin grey monkey. He's approximately 6.5 feet tall when standing, though because his arms and legs are equal in length, he usually walks on all fours when he isn't submerged in water. Each of his eyes have 2 speckled green irises each, and his partially webbed, sharply clawed opposable hands are covered in smooth, thickly mottled skin. The rest of his body is coated in short grey fur, and while his head is much like that of a wild dog, the teeth within his heavily whiskered jaws have much more in common with a crocodile. His most unique feature by far is his tail. The surprisingly muscular appendage is not only twice the length of Macuil's body, but also ends in a slender third hand. Lastly, the customer wears a colourful, multi-stranded, macabre necklace, decorated with several dozen teeth, claws, and whole fingers strung intermittently across the different strings. Rules for delivery. 1. Be sure to wear sunglasses, gloves, and a face mask during this delivery. If you don't have any of these items, take the ones you're missing from our supply room. They are beyond important. 2. There's a chance you'll hear a baby crying as you get closer to Macuil's abode. If you do, call out to the customer stating that his pizza has arrived. The crying won't stop right away, but should cease entirely after about a minute. 3. Stay away from the water completely until the crying stops. Macuil uses that sound to lure hapless prey towards him. Anything approaching the water's edge while he's crying is guaranteed to be dragged into its depths. 4. Given the sheer number of rocks surrounding the water, you'll have to stand on them to make this delivery. Watch your footing carefully. The rocks tend to be quite slippery, and Macuil will be quick to strike if you fall. Additionally, be watchful for frogs as you walk on the rocks, being especially careful not to step on them. Macuil has a genuine love for frogs, and tends to get violent quickly when they're mistreated. We dread to think of what he'll do if you accidentally crush one. 6. Macuil will rise partially out of the water once you're close to him. He'll greet you with a wide, toothy smile. If he starts to climb onto the rocks, however, step back as far as you can without losing sight of him. It's best you don't let him get too close. 7. If the first rule wasn't warning enough, do not let Macuil see your eyes, teeth, or fingernails. You don't want him thinking you're part of the order. 8. Be careful that you don't drop anything into the water. While getting the item back won't be hard, Macuil will be greatly offended that you've littered in his waters. He'll throw it back at you with force, along with a few shells and small rocks. 9. While you should never touch the waters of Broken Hand Pond, that goes for double with Macuil. As far as he's concerned, the water in this corner of the pond belongs to him, and only him. Nothing other than fish and frogs are allowed in it, unless it's food. Anything else will be thrown from the water in pieces. 10. There's a great chance you'll suddenly hear someone shouting directly behind you. Don't be alarmed and react as little as possible. Macuil is excellent at throwing his voice, often using it to create distractions. Should you turn towards the shouting or panic in any way, Macuil won't hesitate to pull you into the water. 11th. Watch the movement of the water's surface carefully. Macuil's tail has incredible reach, and he often twitches it just under the surface before striking. The resulting rippling is the only warning you'll get before the tail lunges out at you. 12th. Macuil will start chewing on the pieces of his necklace once he sees the pizza. That said, If he begins completely eating those pieces, be very wary. His appetite is stronger than usual, and you might join the pizza and chips if you aren't careful. 13. If Macuil does start biting off parts of his necklace, gently shake the bag of chips. Macuil loves the hard crunch of kettle-cooked chips, and the sound of them rustling is an excellent way to take his focus onto them and off of you. 14. Be careful that you don't break any chips when handling the bag. While he'll be excited by the sound of rustling chips, that enthusiasm will turn to anger fast if he hears them breaking. That's one less chip for him to chew, and if too many are lost, he won't be happy about it. 15. Do not give Macuil the bag of chips until after he's paid and you're ready to leave. Those chips are the main reason he's behaving himself. You probably won't stay out of the water for long if he gets them too soon. 16th. Macuil will pay for the order with exactly 30 cocoa beans. He'll put them all in a bag, counting them as he does. Be wary, however, when he throws the bag to you. He's likely to use this as a distraction to strike with his tail. Be prepared to jump back if necessary. 17. Macuil's also likely to throw a small, tightly sealed jar at you after he's given you the bag. While you should also be watching for his tail when he throws it, there's nothing concerning about the jar otherwise. It's your tip. It contains a rather delicious, though surprisingly spicy, chocolate beverage. 18. If and when he throws the jar, be certain it does not hit the rocks and break. Macuil makes the jars and beverage it contains himself, so he'll be greatly irritated if you're careless with them. 19. Once Macuil has paid, throw the pizza to him, followed by the chips once you're almost off the rocks. Trying to give him the food by hand is far too risky. Be particularly careful to watch for frogs as you go to leave. They have a tendency of gathering around people's feet as they leave Macuil's pond. We think the frogs are trying to get people to misstep and fall into the water. And don't forget how poorly Macuil will react if you accidentally step on one of them. 21. If Macuil starts growling, followed by his pupils wildly contracting and dilating, you've managed to enrage him. He'll shortly dig one of his claws into the back of his hand, writing on himself and chanting in a language time has long forgotten. He won't ever do this until he has his pizza and chips, but you want to be as far away from him as possible when he does. He's trying to tether himself to you, as well as your location. The further away you are from Macuil, the more likely this is to fail. Rules for removing the mark. 1. If Macuil's tethering was successful, you'll feel a sudden intense itch on the back of your right hand. Once the itching fades, a small shape resembling an outstretched hand will be left in its place. This is Macuil's mark, and it's a serious danger to your well-being. Anyone bearing this mark is connected to the monster who gave it, and is therefore a target of its fury. While this rarely ends well for the bearer, the mark will eventually fade on its own after about a week, as will its effects. Everything you need to know in order to survive that week can be found in the following rules. 2. Keep an eye out for frogs of any kind. Frogs are the only creatures Macuil genuinely likes, and many of them follow him around frequently. Seeing a frog while you carry the mark is a good sign that Macuil himself is close by. 3. While bearing the mark, avoid water as much as possible. This includes ponds and rivers as well as pools, bathtubs, and even your own sink. Macuil has a strong connection to water and may manifest part of himself within it. 4. Only drink and bathe in distilled water until the mark goes away. That's the only kind of water Macuil doesn't have a connection with. 5. Stay home for the last 3 days of the mark's duration. The longer you have the mark, the stronger your connection to Macuil will be. For this reason, be especially wary of even small collections of water as the week goes on. The last victim Macuil marked was pulled into a bird bath after possessing the mark for 5 days. Be certain all your windows and doors have durable locks on them. Macuil's mark tells him exactly where you are at all times, and he will attempt to break into your house eventually. 7. While this should be obvious, don't open your door if you hear an infant crying on your doorstep. Macuil will always try this trick at least once. 8. Tape the handles of any sinks or faucets firmly in place. Macuil has a sway over water, and he's been known to flood his victims' houses by opening all their faucets from the inside. 9. If Macuil's hand grabs you from a sink, tub, etc., do whatever you have to in order to break free before it gets you into the water. You'll be dragged into Macuil's pond if you can't escape. 10. Keep a multitude of kettle-cooked chips as well as other crunchy foods in your house whilst bearing the mark. Macuil is specifically targeting you, but while he does favour eyes and teeth, he can't resist eating anything crunchy. Should he manage to get into your house, enough crunchy foods might lead him to raid your kitchen instead, eating his fill before he even finds you. He'll then temporarily lose interest, buying you valuable time. 11. If at any point you notice a frog has gotten into your house, lock yourself in a secure room immediately. As we said earlier, they often follow Macuil around. Chances are, a frog being in your house means that Macuil is in your house. 12th. On the 7th day, Macuil will try his hardest to reach you. Barricade your doors and windows, heavily tape any notoriously leaky pipes, and put plugs into any and all potential water sources. If there's even a single way he can get inside, that's the day he'll find it. 13. Be absolutely positive that Macuil doesn't get even a slight glance at you as the mark is fading. He'll try to re-establish the mark, but he needs to visually see you to make that happen. 14. Finally, stay inside 10 hours after the mark fades entirely. That's about how long Macuil will wait around afterwards. Once you have, there's nothing to worry about going forward. Macuil will lose interest quickly, and thanks to his spacey memory, he'll forget where you live shortly afterwards. And that should be all you need to know about Macuil. He is one of Cribble-ruck Run's least human residents, and certainly part of the reason mutilated corpses occasionally float down the river that flows from Broken Hand Pond. He isn't terribly fond of most creatures, with frogs being the only ones he genuinely seems to care about, being directly responsible for the large population of amphibians living within the pond. He's also the reason nothing living within it messes with frogs. As we mentioned previously, one of Broken Hand Pond's residents regularly removes anything she dislikes from the pond, floating them up and out of the water and then throwing them into the trees. Her name is Chol, and when Macuil moved into the pond, she was more than slightly disgusted by the dozens of frogs that joined him. Her first reaction was to throw them from the water. However, she hadn't even removed 2 of them before the water around Chol seemed to explode, and suddenly the monstrous woman was thrown from the water herself. But before she could react, a long hand struck out from the pond and dragged Chol back in. A horrible shrieking soon filled the air, followed by wild thrashing and furious howling. Once the chaos ended, Chol was badly scarred, having lost an eye and several of her teeth, as well as a large part of her right arm. This, you see, is why it's so important to watch out for frogs around Macuil. He was willing to permanently disfigure Chol for simply throwing his beloved frogs around. What he'll do to someone who actually kills a frog is not a concept you want to consider, and it's absolutely not one you wish to experience. Sincerely, Rick and Nick Castillo. Nick and Rick's Pizza, rules for delivering to Nerissa. Hello, Daryl. We're glad to hear that your last delivery didn't take any unfortunate turns. Things could have easily gotten out of hand quickly with Macuil, given his unusual cravings. But since all is well, we'll be sending you back to Cribble-ruck Run shortly. More specifically, we're sending you to another regular customer of ours from Broken Hand Pond. For what it's worth, this one isn't anywhere near as irritable as Macuil. She is, however, a tad bit possessive. So, as always, we've provided detailed information regarding this customer to help you out. Be sure to read it thoroughly. Customer name, Nerissa. Address, 2991 Champlain. Regular order, large Hawaiian pizza, topped additionally with raw clams and oysters. Residence description, small sandy inlet on the northernmost bank of Broken Hand Pond. It's enclosed almost entirely by ferns and willow trees. Numerous shells and small teeth litter the sand. Customer description, Nerissa resembles a beautiful young woman with ghostly pale olive-colored skin. She wears a long, delicately sewn white gown, and her arms are adorned with several large bracelets. She carries an enormous oyster shell with her wherever she goes. the inside having been so thoroughly polished and glazed that it casts a reflection like a mirror. The girl's long flowing hair is primarily black, though it slowly turns ashy grey at the ends, and her big, brilliantly purple eyes have an inherently friendly look to them. However, nothing else about Nerissa is even remotely human. She has a set of large gills lining the sides of her waist, with several smaller ones running along her cheeks and across her wrists. Her fingernails have sharp, jagged edges, and her flowing white gown is badly torn at the bottom, as though it's been hooked and snagged on countless branches and rocks. Additionally, while Nerissa's in the water, her legs occasionally take on a monstrous form, the long tapering body of a massive eel, patterned brilliantly with white banded stripes across muddy brown scales. More concerning, however, is Nerissa's teeth. Each one of them is surprisingly shark-like, being lined with sharp, serrated edges. Disturbingly enough, there even appears to be an additional set of teeth lining the back of her throat. Rules for delivery. 1. Before leaving for Broken Hand Pond, take a set of earbuds with you from the supply room. They can be quite invaluable around this customer. 2. Remove your name tag before leaving the restaurant. For reasons that should become clear soon, you do not want this customer to know your name. 3. Since you'll have to park on the side of the road once you're close to the inlet, be sure to park on the side opposite the pond. There's a few creatures here that might tamper with your car if it's too close to the water. 4. The ground between the road and Nerissa's inlet is slightly steep and notably rocky. While you certainly don't want to lose your footing here, be especially careful not to cut yourself on the rocks. The smell of blood can make this inlet's inhabitants quite antsy. Given how restless they'll be from your presence alone, you do not want to make the situation worse. Additionally, as you navigate your way down to the inlet, be watchful for any rocks that appear to be moist or slick. A fair number of unusually large eels live around this inlet, and they occasionally like to climb around the rocks, weaving and entwining themselves amongst them. The eels are surprisingly good at hiding, but tend to leave a noticeably wet trail as they slide across the ground. Do not get closer to them than necessary. These eels have a nasty bite. 6. Once you reach the inlet, Nerissa will surface near the water's edge. She'll greet you cheerfully, asking if you'd like to swim with her. For more than a few reasons, it's best you don't acknowledge this invitation. 7. Nerissa is extremely charming and very endearing to anyone who meets her. You'll greatly enjoy talking with her as a result. However, it's best you make this delivery as quick as possible. Nerissa has sinister intentions for you. The longer you stay on her beach, the more time she has to act on them. 8. Be particularly watchful for the aforementioned large eels while you're on the shoreline. A few of them will always stay near Nerissa, and those slender brown fish are surprisingly strong, as well as notably clever. They've been known to sneak up on Nerissa's visitors from behind while she talks to them. Once they get close enough, the eels then grab the hapless victims by their ankles and help Nerissa drag them into the pond as they fall. 9th, Nerissa is extremely flirty. She'll make more than a few flirtatious remarks, complimenting you as naturally beautiful and a sight for sore eyes. Do the best you can to ignore her. She's trying to distract you so her eels can get behind you. 10. Nerissa will try to encourage you to take your shoes off and step into the shallow part of the pond, claiming that it's extremely refreshing. Again, don't acknowledge this invitation. You'll be an easy victim in the water. 11th. Nerissa will regularly hum and sing while you're on her beach. When she does, mentally count to yourself until she stops. This is beyond important. You must keep your thoughts occupied while Nerissa is singing. Her voice has a powerful pull over everyone who hears it. If you don't distract yourself from its melody, you'll be completely entranced. Nerissa can simply just ask you to come into the water at that point. 12th. Do not trust anything Nerissa tells you. She will try to earn your trust by giving you advice and information about the pond, claiming to have your best interests in mind, but this isn't quite true. Her only interest is getting you into the water. She'll say anything she thinks might get you into the water, whether that be today or even weeks from now. 13. Avoid staring at Nerissa for prolonged periods. The longer you look at her, the more beautiful she'll seem to be. Eventually, she'll look like the most beautiful person you've ever seen. She's even taken on the appearance of a man before this way. You'll find yourself being physically drawn towards her if that happens, and she'll be quick to act on it. 14. If Rule 2 wasn't warning enough, do not tell Nerissa your name. She will ask for it. Just tell her you have the pizza she ordered, simply saying that you're the delivery driver. She will insist that you give her your actual name, but absolutely do not give it to her. Names have power, and she's one of the few creatures who know how to use that power. 15th. Nerissa will be persistent in trying to get your name. She'll probably try to guess it when she realizes you won't give it to her yourself. If she does manage to guess it, do not give her even the slightest hint that she got it right. Your name can't affect you if you don't acknowledge it as your own. 16. To repeat the above rule, do not acknowledge your name if Nerissa says it. There's a chance she's already gotten it from one of our other customers, but even if Nerissa does know what your name is, she can only use it against you if you've actually acknowledged it as your name. But if you do acknowledge it, you won't be able to refuse anything Nerissa says. She'll be able to simply ask you to walk into the pond, and you won't be able to resist it. 17. If Nerissa's gills suddenly appear to start vibrating, followed by a high-pitched ringing sound filling the air as she inhales, quickly put the earplugs in your ears and back away from the water immediately. She's about to sing her song in its purest form. There's not a single creature that can hear this sound up close without being drawn towards it. 18. Nerissa will pay for the order with several shimmering hand-sized scales. She'll motion for you to come into the water to take them from her, but that won't be necessary. Nerissa will slowly get closer the longer you stay on the beach. By the time you go to get the payment from her, she'll almost be close enough to touch you. Tell her to toss the scales onto the beach and quickly collect them without taking your eyes off of her. 19. There's a good chance Nerissa will try to give you a few large cowrie shells as a tip. Do not accept the shells. She can sense where they are at all times and can hear anything spoken around them. This is the most common way she gets our employees' names. 20. If Nerissa failed to enchant you, she'll probably come out of the water after paying in a last attempt to claim you. When she does, try not to let her physically touch you. Her skin contains an unusual toxin that can cause strong euphoria, as well as various hallucinations and mild numbness of the senses later on. She often attempts to hug people as a way of saying goodbye, then pulls them into the water as the toxins take effect. 21st. Nerissa will also probably try to kiss you at least once. While letting her touch you at all is bad enough, absolutely do not let Nerissa kiss you. This is how she feeds. Her kiss can suck the life force right out of your body, along with many of your internal organs. 22nd. Do not turn your back on Nerissa as you go to leave. The creature might try to grab you if she thinks she'll have the element of surprise. 23. Once you're out of the neighborhood, pull over and check your clothing thoroughly. Nerissa's been known to hide cowrie shells in people's pockets and clothing as they leave. Be very thorough. Several of our employees have found cowrie shells in their clothes when Nerissa never even got close enough to touch them. Rules for dealing with the toxins. 1. If Nerissa managed to touch you, her toxins will begin taking effect on you shortly. While its effects will eventually fade on their own, they last for approximately an hour, getting more intense with every minute. Read the following rules to help deal with its influence. 2. Get back into your car and drive out of the neighborhood immediately after you were touched. The toxins initially only cause feelings of euphoria, which will make you hesitant to leave, but you must be out of the area within 20 minutes. After those first 20 minutes, your hands and limbs will begin to go numb, followed shortly by the appearance of mild hallucinations. It's best you get out of Cribble-Ruck Run before they take effect. You won't be able to drive in that state, making you an easy target for the neighborhood's inhabitants. 3. Once you're out of the neighborhood, find a safe place to pull over, pulling the car's emergency brake to be safe. As soon as the hallucinations begin, driving will be dangerous. Most of what you'll think you see will be nothing more than strong illusions. You'll quite likely find yourself swerving to miss things that aren't there. Worst yet, you won't be able to tell when the things in front of you are actually real. 4. Try not to react to the hallucinations vocally in any way. While you should be safe from Cribble-Ruck Run's inhabitants on the side of the road, Many of them have keen ears. Any unusual or frantic sounds will possibly draw their attention. 5. After about 35 minutes, your arms and legs will go completely numb, resulting in partial paralysis. Rest assured, however, that this is only temporary. It's meant to ensure that Nerissa's more persistent victims can't run from her and should wear off a few minutes after it began. However, the hallucinations will still persist for around 20 to 30 minutes. 6. While the numbing of your limbs is temporary, it's best you make sure the car's doors are all locked before it takes effect. Heaven forbid anything tries to get into your car before it wears off. You won't be able to stop the intruder from opening the doors. 7. Never open your car doors, no matter what you see. Whatever you think is out there is, hopefully, just a hallucination meant to lure you out of the car. If you do leave the car, the imaginary image will always try to lead you back to the source of the toxin itself. Nerissa. 8. You'll probably think a police officer has stopped by to check on you at one point. They'll instruct you to exit the vehicle, saying that they're taking you to the station. Do not fall for this. The police force around here doesn't patrol near Cribble-Ruck Run. Listen to the officer, and they'll lead you right through the neighborhood and back down to Nerissa's beach, assuming nothing else finds you before you get that far. 9. Do not be alarmed when your hands start twitching wildly. This is actually a good sign. The toxins are finally leaving your body. 10. Right as the toxins wear off, you'll most likely hear people you know screaming frantically in the distance. Again, ignore them. This is a last-ditch attempt to get you to chase the hallucinations back to Nerissa. 11. After you've fully recovered from the toxins, double-check to make sure Nerissa didn't hide any cowrie shells on you before driving away. Again, she is disturbingly skilled at hiding those shells in people's clothing. That should be everything you need to know about Nerissa. She's one of the pond's more troublesome inhabitants thanks to her charming nature and entrancing song, as well as the main reason we don't send employees new to the neighborhood to Broken Hand Pond first. It's worth noting, however, that Nerissa isn't completely wicked, despite her method of feeding. She does genuinely enjoy people's company, only eating them as a necessary means to stay alive. Nerissa's kind cannot survive without draining life energy from other creatures. And believe it or not, every flirtatious comment she makes to you is actually genuine. She truly considers all people to be beautiful. And while she does quite literally suck the life out of her victims, Nerissa can't actually bring herself to part with any of them. Instead, she takes each of their remains and reshapes them, stretching the corpse and rolling it thin until it looks like a snake, then detailing it with gills and fins. In truth, each of the eels surrounding Nerissa is one of her previous victims, and despite what she's done to them, they seem to love her just as much as she loves them. That said, we think many of the eels climb those rocks so regularly because they're trying to return to their old lives, only to be forced back to the pond instead by an inability to breathe air. But of course, it's best you don't sympathize with Nerissa's eels in the slightest. If you do, you just might end up keeping them company. Permanently. Sincerely, Rick and Nick Castillo. Nick and Rick's Pizza, rules for delivering to the Mockhide. Hello, Daryl. We must say we're quite surprised at how your delivery to Nerissa went. This is definitely the first time she hasn't attempted to stop one of our drivers from leaving. But since that delivery went so swimmingly, we'll be sending you back to Broken Hand Pond once again, this time to a more animalistic customer of ours. Truth be told, this one has all the ferocity and charm of a saltwater crocodile with an appetite to match, though we're pretty sure feeding an actual crocodile would be less troublesome. But in any case, we've given you all the information you could possibly need regarding this customer. Read it thoroughly, and there should be nothing to worry about. Customer name, the Mockhide. Address, 2924 Champ Lane. Regular order, large meat lover's pizza, undercooked with extra thick crust, topped excessively with shredded mutton and raw pork scraps. Additionally, the whole pizza should be soaked heavily in cow blood. Residence description: the northeastern corner of Broken Hand Pond's shoreline. The mud on the shore here is riddled with deep marks of various shapes and sizes. Several of them resemble deep drag marks, while others show clear signs of large creatures thrashing around in the mud. In any case, all the marks eventually fade right at the water's edge. Customer description. The Mockhide resembles an incredibly large, poorly preserved animal pelt. Its topside is covered in patches of shaggy brown hair, with several large bald spots exposing the weathered brown skin underneath. Overall, the pelt strongly resembles a massive old cowhide. That is, until you look under it. The lumpy underside of this pelt is covered with crowded rows of shiny black teeth. The teeth are so great in number, they collectively resemble a blanket of writhing sea urchins, twitching subtly as their owner moves. The creature also possesses a grim array of pointy white-tipped fangs at its center, and the hide's outer edges are adorned with long, sharply hooked claws. On top of that, the pelt's edges additionally possess an alarming number of glazed, pupil-less, cloudy blue eyes, all of which are attached to long, retractable eye stalks. Macuil rules for delivery. 1. Before leaving for the area, be certain to take 2 small bags of salt with you from our supply room. It's beyond important to have salt on hand when dealing with this particular customer. 2. If you have any recent cuts or scrapes, be sure to rub them thoroughly in alcohol and citrus extract, then bandage them tightly before leaving the restaurant. Going to this delivery with the smell of blood on you is a big mistake. It happens to be this customer's favorite food. 3. Do not wear jewelry or shiny objects of any sort during this delivery. Such things tend to provoke this customer quite easily. 4. Upon arriving at the Mockhide's dwelling, be sure to take 1 bag of salt with you, leaving the other one on the passenger seat. This is the best way to keep any and all possible happenings under control. 5. Once you're near the shoreline, take no more than 2 steps from off the grass onto the mud. Getting any closer than that to the Mockhide's hunting grounds is a serious mistake. 6. Once on the shore, open the pizza box and start fanning the lid towards the water. The resulting scent of pork and blood filling the air will grab the Mockhide's attention almost immediately. It will arrive soon thereafter. 7. While waiting, be very watchful of the pond's surface. Eventually you'll notice one of the Mockhide's eye stalks subtly breach the water, looking around slowly. The creature regularly scouts for food this way, so this is how you'll know when it's nearby. 8. Once the eye stalk peeking above the surface notices you, slowly open the pizza box to get its attention. At this point, avoid making any sudden movements if possible for the remainder of this delivery. Such movements provoke the Mockhide quite easily. 9. As long as the spying eye on the surface eventually sinks back under the water, all is well, and the Mockhide will soon drag itself ashore to collect its pizza. However, if more eye stalks start appearing alongside the first one instead, quickly get as far from the water's edge as possible. The Mockhide is about to attack. Shortly, the massive beast will launch itself high out of the water in a frenzied attempt to land on you. 10. Assuming the Mockhide didn't throw itself from the pond, it will instead start pulling itself ashore. Once it does, sprinkle the bag of salt heavily in a long line at your feet. The Mockhide hates salt, so this line should be more than enough to keep it from getting too close. 11th. Be certain not to empty the bag entirely. Instead, after you've put down the salt line, keep the bag and all the salt left inside it tightly clenched in one hand. Don't let go of it until after you're back in the car. Worst comes to worst, that salt may be the only thing keeping you out of the pond. 12. Do not reach across the salt line in any way until after the Mockhide has taken the pizza and begun returning to the pond. The creature's dislike of salt is strong enough to keep it from reaching over the salt line, but its many eye stalks are surprisingly flexible and remarkably strong. Just one of them has enough power to drag you by your outstretched hand over that salt line and into the water, where it will promptly feast on your blood. 13. Once the Mockhide is relatively close to the line, quickly open the pizza box entirely and face it towards the beast. After it's gotten a good look at the box's contents, the hide will start clicking and gurgling frantically. This signals that it's about to pay for the pizza. 14. The Mockhide will drop a large black pearl into the sand as payment. Do not, however, attempt to collect the pearl yet. The beast could easily take this opportunity to drag you away. 15. As soon as the Mockhide drops the pearl, gently toss the pizza over the salt line towards the creature. Once it's pulled the pie under itself and returned to the water's edge, quickly grab the pearl and get back into the car. 16. There's a good chance that after it returns to the water, the Mockhide will have dropped more pearls close to the pond's edge. Do not make any attempt to grab any of these additional pearls. They are a trap to get you closer to the shoreline. The Mockhide won't hesitate to strike if you fall for it. Again, get back in the vehicle and leave immediately after collecting the first pearl. Rules for dealing with an attack. 1. If the Mockhide ever manages to grab you, quickly throw the handful of salt on it or shower it with whatever's left of the bag of salt if possible. The creature will screech in pain at this, flailing and shaking wildly as it does. It'll be too focused on its own pain to stop you from escaping. 2. As you run, try to keep the Mockhide at least partially in your vision and be prepared to dodge suddenly. As the creature's thrashing gets more chaotic, small parts of its body will actually break off and become high-speed projectiles. Be careful none of them hit you. The situation will escalate quickly if they do. For a few brief seconds, those pieces of hide are still alive as they fly through the air. And 3. If the Mockhide grabbed you, then at least a few of its black needles probably stung you. Unfortunately, they inject an unusual venom as they pierce the skin. It quickly causes extreme levels of pain, which often immobilizes the Mockhide's prey due to sheer agony. But fortunately, it never lasts for longer than a few minutes, so ignore it the best you can until it goes away, or at least until you're back in the car with the doors locked. 4. Once you're back in the car and free enough from the pain to pay attention, quickly take note of any and all injuries you have. Act accordingly based on the injury. Leaving wounds untreated in general can have terrible consequences, but this rule counts double for those inflicted by the Mockhide. 5. Depending on the severity of the wounds, you may need to visit the emergency room at the nearby hospital. Should this happen, be sure you say nothing regarding the more unusual circumstances of your injuries. Best case scenario, they'll probably put you in a straitjacket for claiming a semi-aquatic cowskin tried to drink your blood. 6. If a piece of the Mockhide managed to latch onto you earlier, it's important that you act quickly. The patch of skin will fuse with your own skin quickly, draining you of blood at an alarming rate. To remove it, quickly take the second bag of salt and smother the patch of hide with its contents thoroughly. The fragment of hide will quickly detach from you as a result, briefly writhing in pain before dropping dead completely. 7. If you suddenly feel lightheaded, the Mockhide unfortunately managed to start draining your blood. While this almost certainly won't kill you, it will make driving difficult. If it gets to the point you have difficulty focusing on the road, try to get as far from Cribble-Ruck Run as you can, then pull over and call emergency services. 8. If the Mockhide's inner fangs manage to pierce you at any point, quickly drive to the ER. You'll be needing medical attention quickly. 9. Once at the ER, tell the medical personnel you were bitten by an adder or several of them, depending on how many marks there are. The anti-venin for adder bites works remarkably well on the Mockhide's venom, probably due to their similar effects and composition. Unfortunately, the bite marks from the creature bear remarkable similarity to snake bites. The doctors will thus wholeheartedly believe you were just bitten by a simple snake. 10. Depending on how many of the Mockhide's hooks latched onto you during the attack, you'll need the ER's attention with this as well. The deeper wounds will require several stitches. 11. When the medical personnel ask about these wounds, tell them you were mauled by a large cat. Thanks to another resident from Cribble-Ruck Run, such attacks have been common lately. Since the Mockhide's claw marks are also surprisingly similar to wounds inflicted by a big cat, the doctors not only won't have any reason to question your statement, but will also know exactly how to treat the injuries. That should be everything you need to know about the Mockhide. This thing is easily one of the pond's more animalistic inhabitants, and in all honest truth, we're surprised it even knows how to pay our drivers. But believe it or not, those pearls the creature pays with are surprisingly valuable, so we're willing to tolerate its bizarre nature for the most part. We even top this particular pizza excessively to keep the thing happy with us. Though, that said, this monster has caused us quite a bit of trouble these past few years. The worst incident so far was when it attacked an employee of ours named Andrew. While he was all around a great employee, Andrew was unfortunately a little forgetful. We sadly didn't pick up on that until later. This forgetfulness led to more than a few complications when it came to the many rules and guidelines of a certain neighborhood. But somehow, Andrew managed to avoid any and all serious consequences on his deliveries. That is, until we sent him to the Mockhide. On that delivery, when the thing pulled itself onto the shore, Andrew used all the salt in his bag to make the salt line, and thus didn't have any left over to defend himself with. Worse yet, when that slithering hide dropped its shiny black pearl in front of him, Andrew foolishly reached for the shining treasure immediately. Unsurprisingly, the creature grabbed him by his outstretched hand immediately and quickly attempted to sink its hooks into his arm. But somehow, as the terrified Andrew struggled to escape the eye stalk's grasp, he managed to get the hungry beast so frenzied and riled up that it accidentally fell flat onto the line of salt. The resulting agonized flailing sent countless scraps of the Mockhide's body flying through the air. Unfortunately, one of those scraps caught Andrew on the neck. This was the first time this had ever happened, so we tragically didn't know to send a second bag of salt with our drivers yet. So, despite his desperate attempts to rip it off, Andrew couldn't remove the piece of hide from his skin. He had no choice but to quickly drive back to the restaurant for help. Unfortunately, that took more time than the poor fool could afford. After Andrew initially got out of the neighborhood, the panicking delivery driver made a frantic phone call to us explaining the situation. But without warning, a high-pitched shriek interrupted Andrew's own half-screaming voice, and the call cut out completely. Understandably worried, a small swarm of our employees got in their cars and took off in his direction. About half an hour of desperate searching later, one of the searchers noticed a bright pair of lights shining out of the bushes, just off the side of the road and into the woods. Upon further inspection, the lights were discovered to be the tail lights of Andrew's car, with what was left of poor Andrew still stuck inside. Most of his skin had been ripped and torn away, and his remains were so thoroughly drained of blood that there wasn't even a stain where the corpse was sitting. And as our mortified employees looked around the gruesome scene, they discovered a small slick trail leading away from the area. After following it, they found the trail ended right in front of a large river. For a little while after that, numerous small animals were regularly found dead near that river, with every single one of them missing most of their skin and blood. Eventually, the small animals were slowly replaced by bigger animals, until those reports ceased almost entirely, and were quickly replaced by a small number of missing persons cases. At the same time, multiple claims of a giant tanned skin floating across the river began to appear in the news, though they eventually faded into obscurity as sightings diminished. But these reports and claims led us to a frightening conclusion. Somehow, those pieces the Mockhide rips from itself out of agonizing pain don't die, or at least not as quickly as they should. They might only survive like this for a few seconds, but if those pieces can hook into a steady source of flesh and blood quickly enough, they can avoid dying altogether. They'll feed on this new source, drinking its blood and stealing its skin, slowly growing, until they eventually need to find more food. Then, they go out and hunt, slowly growing bigger with each prey they claim until one day, they've become another monster entirely. So now, we regularly double-check every car delivering to the Mockhide for 2 bags of salt, as well as having an individual rule about it. That is because, for one thing, what happened to Andrew is nothing short of horrifying, and we wouldn't wish a death like that on anyone or anything. But on top of that, the Mockhide is nothing short of a horrible, terrifying monstrosity and a decent threat to everything around it. The fact that even one of them ever existed is bad enough. We do not want that number to rise more than it already has. Sincerely, Rick and Nick Castillo.